She wasn't loud. She wasn't dressed flashy. She didn't demand attention or special treatment. She didn't even raise her voice once. But the moment she stepped into the first-class cabin carrying her infant daughter in one arm and a soft diaper bag slung over her shoulder, the atmosphere shifted like a gust of cold air. Eyes narrowed. Conversations paused. A silence rolled over the polished cabin floor, not because of awe, but of judgment. One woman clutched her pearls. A man wearing a tailored navy blazer rolled his eyes so hard it was almost audible. And no one said a word. Not yet. Naomi Blake barely noticed. Or maybe she had just gotten too good at pretending not to. She walked with quiet purpose, pausing at row 2, seat A, and gently adjusted the soft travel blanket under her daughter's head before settling into her seat. The child, no more than 6 months old, was sleeping soundly against her mother's chest, her tiny hand curled near the collar of Naomi's mustard-yellow blouse. The flight hadn't even taken off, and already Naomi could feel the heat of assumptions crawling over her skin like static. But she didn't flinch. She never did. A flight attendant approached, her heels clicking against the narrow aisle. Her smile was polite, but tight. Corporate. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said, her voice sweetened by protocol but sharpened by suspicion. "Are you sure you're in the right cabin?" Naomi looked up, her eyes calm but alert. She held up her boarding pass without a word. The attendant took it, scanned it like she expected it to be counterfeit, then cleared her throat. "I see. Seat 2A. Okay then." No apology. No warmth. Just okay then. The flight attendant handed back the pass and walked away. Naomi sat back, adjusting the blanket once more, her baby still fast asleep. She had expected this. Not hoped for it, of course. Not invited it. But expected it. You learn, as a black woman in power, that sometimes your greatest weapon is patience. That silence, when wielded with dignity, cuts deeper than 1,000 raised voices. And Naomi had learned to wait. She wasn't always like this. Once, she used to correct people. Now, she let them unravel themselves. The whispers began in the row behind her. A woman's voice, hushed but just loud enough to hear, muttered, "They'll let anyone up here these days." Another added, "I hope that baby doesn't cry the whole flight." Naomi's hands remained still on the carrier strap. Her eyes stayed focused on the overhead sign. Seatbelt light still on. She didn't turn around. She didn't need to. A man across the aisle cleared his throat and leaned slightly toward her. He wore a watch that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments. His voice was casual, but his eyes said otherwise. "First time flying first class?" he asked. Naomi smiled without teeth. "Not quite." He nodded, as if to say, "I figured." Then, as if trying to recover from something he hadn't realized he exposed, he added, "It's just, you don't see many young moms up here. That's all." Naomi tilted her head. "You don't say." The baby stirred lightly. Naomi began gently patting her back, humming a soft tune only her daughter would recognize. That's when another flight attendant approached, this one older, with years of experience and a tighter expression. She looked at Naomi, then at the baby, and sighed. "We just want to make sure the rest of the cabin has a comfortable experience," she said. "If your baby becomes too fussy, we might have to," she paused, searching for a word that didn't sound as cruel as her meaning, "reassign you to a quieter section." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "You mean coach?" The attendant hesitated. "It's just that first class isn't always ideal for infants." Naomi's voice was quiet, steady. "You mean for the people sitting around the infant?" The attendant didn't respond. Just offered a tight smile and walked away. The murmurs around her grew louder now. One woman stood and walked toward the galley, speaking to a flight crew member in tones Naomi couldn't fully hear, but the body language said enough. She gestured toward Naomi's row, her expression tight with irritation. Another man shook his head and muttered, "This is why you don't let people bring babies on premium flights." Naomi looked out the window. The tarmac glowed in the midday sun. Somewhere out there, on the other side of this aircraft, was a world where she didn't have to prove she belonged. But right now, all she could feel was the invisible hand pressing her back into the seat, trying to reduce her to nothing more than her skin, her gender, and the child in her lap. She shifted her gaze slightly toward the aisle, where yet another passenger was watching her openly now. A young white woman, dressed in athleisure with earbuds in, shook her head with a dramatic sigh and mouthed the word, "Unbelievable." Naomi had seen this all before. At board meetings. In press rooms. In donor events. The same assumptions wrapped in different packaging. The disbelief that someone like her could have made it this far without their approval. She closed her eyes and exhaled deeply. Then came the final insult. A uniformed staff member entered the cabin, an airport security officer, summoned before the plane had even left the gate. He walked straight toward her, flanked by the lead flight attendant, who was whispering something into his ear. He approached Naomi with the practiced calm of someone trying to appear non-confrontational but prepared to escalate. "Ma'am," he began, "we've received multiple complaints about a disturbance and possible seat confusion. Can I see your boarding pass again, please?" Naomi didn't move at first. Then slowly, she reached into her coat pocket and retrieved the same pass she'd shown earlier. Wordlessly, she handed it over. The officer examined it. Then looked down at her child. Then back at the flight attendant, whose face was stiff with feigned neutrality. "You traveling alone?" he asked. "Yes." "And this your child?" "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Okay. It's just. First-class tickets on this airline can cost upwards of $2,000, ma'am." "You sure you?" Naomi's voice sliced through the air like glass. "Not loud. Just sharp. I paid full fare. I booked this seat myself. I fly this airline every month. And yes," she reached into her purse again, calmly, precisely, "I'm sure." She pulled out a slim leather wallet and flipped it open, revealing a gold-plated badge and an official government ID. The officer squinted at it, then blinked. Then he took a step back. The lead flight attendant leaned in to glance. Her eyes widened slightly. Naomi looked directly into the officer's face. "My name is Senator Naomi Blake. United States Senator. I sit on the Subcommittee for Aviation Oversight. And I'm flying first class because I earned it." Silence. Thick, stifling, electric silence filled the cabin. The murmuring passengers who had judged her with their eyes now looked away. The man with the expensive watch leaned back in his seat, pretending to check his phone. The woman who had clutched her pearls stared at her tray table. And the baby? She kept sleeping, peaceful and undisturbed. The flight attendant's smile returned, but now it was trembling. "Senator Blake," she stammered, "we apologize for the misunderstanding. Would you like a glass of champagne while we prepare for departure?" Naomi didn't blink. "I'd like for you to treat every passenger with a seat in this cabin with the same respect you would if they weren't carrying a baby or looked like me." The attendant nodded quickly, almost too quickly. Naomi didn't need the champagne. She had already won. And the plane hadn't even left the ground yet. The plane was still grounded, the engines humming softly like a held breath. Naomi sat quietly in seat 2A, her daughter nestled close to her chest, unaware of the standoff that had just unfolded. The air in the first-class cabin had shifted. Before, it was cold with silent judgment. Now, it was laced with embarrassment, tension, and barely disguised discomfort. People avoided her eyes. The same mouths that had spoken assumptions were now sealed shut. But the damage had already been done, and Naomi wasn't in a forgiving mood. She turned her head and looked out the window. The tarmac glistened under the afternoon sun, but all she saw was a reflection of herself in the plexiglass, composed, firm, and tired. Tired of these moments. Tired of having to explain herself to people who had already decided who she was. This wasn't new. It never was. Just another stop on a long road paved with doubt and disrespect. The male flight attendant who had questioned her earlier now stood awkwardly near the front galley, whispering nervously with another crew member. His posture was different now, less authoritative, more guarded. Every few seconds, he stole glances at Naomi's row, as if debating whether to come over and say something. He didn't. The older woman seated in 2C, 2 seats away, clutched her Chanel handbag tighter and leaned toward the aisle. She whispered something to the man beside her, her voice too low to hear but her intent clear. She didn't like being in the same row as the senator with the baby. The man nodded, then pushed the call button. A different attendant approached this time. "How can I help you?" she asked. "Can we be moved?" the woman asked. "It's just. I paid a premium for a peaceful flight. And with the baby and all." Naomi heard every word. The attendant gave a weak smile. "I'm afraid we're full today. I can offer complimentary earplugs or a drink once we're in the air." The woman scoffed, clearly dissatisfied, and muttered something Naomi didn't catch, but she didn't need to. The intent was loud enough. The captain's voice crackled through the speaker overhead. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are just finishing pre-flight checks and should be pushing back shortly. Flight time to Los Angeles will be approximately 4 hours and 20 minutes. Flight attendants, prepare for departure." The cabin lights dimmed slightly. Naomi adjusted her daughter's blanket and kissed her softly on the forehead. For a brief moment, the world narrowed to that small space between them, mother and daughter, warm and still, shielded from the ignorance outside that tried so hard to find a way in. But then the voices started again. "Are we really doing this?" one man muttered behind her. "Can't believe they just let anyone buy a first-class seat now," someone else added. Another woman across the aisle leaned toward Naomi and whispered, not kindly, "Some of us are trying to get work done. You understand, right?" Naomi slowly turned her head to meet the woman's eyes. "Do you?" The woman blinked, caught off guard, and quickly turned away. The plane began to taxi. The engine's soft roar grew stronger. Naomi closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself. She'd walked into enough hostel rooms to know how to wait out discomfort. But this wasn't a boardroom. This wasn't Congress. This was supposed to be a flight. Just a flight. She should have been able to sit quietly with her child, sip her water, and rest. A gentle cry stirred from her daughter. Naomi rocked her slowly, humming under her breath. But the moment the sound reached the air, the tension exploded again. Another call button lit up. "Excuse me," the woman in row 1 said sharply to a flight attendant. "Can't she be moved to the back? That's what those sections are for." Naomi didn't look up, but she felt it, every eye, every sigh, every subtle shake of the head. She had paid more than $2,000 for this seat. She had worked harder than most people could imagine to sit where she was. But to them, none of that mattered. All they saw was a woman they assumed didn't belong. And now, they were determined to prove it, even if it meant disguising prejudice as comfort. The baby whimpered again, sensing the tension more than the noise. Naomi reached into her bag for a pacifier and bottle. She moved with quiet efficiency, every motion designed to soothe, not disturb. But in a cabin filled with entitlement, even motherhood felt like a threat. A different flight attendant came forward, the one who had scanned her boarding pass earlier. She kneeled slightly beside Naomi's seat. "Ma'am," she said quietly, "I'm so sorry to ask this, but some of the other passengers are feeling uncomfortable. If there's anything we can do to help ease the situation, maybe a curtain divider, or—" Naomi looked at her. "Are you asking me to cover my child so the passengers around me don't have to see her?" The attendant flushed. "No, I'm not saying that, I just—" Naomi's voice was calm. "Would you say this if I were a white man holding a baby?" The attendant blinked, mouth open. Then shook her head. I didn't mean it like that." "But it came out like that," Naomi said softly. "And intent doesn't erase impact." Silence again. Even the engines felt quieter. The attendant rose slowly and stepped back, nodding. "Of course, Senator." Let us know if you need anything. And just like that, the title shifted the room again. That word. Senator. It hung in the air like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. The man with the expensive watch across the aisle gave a weak chuckle. Well, I guess we should have Googled her before opening our mouths. Naomi didn't respond. She wasn't here for their apologies. She was here for the principle. A few rows back, someone whispered, "Did she say senator?" "Like, actual Congress?" "Yes," came the reply. Naomi Blake. She's been in the news. Youngest black woman in the Senate. Another hush swept through the cabin. Recognition spread like spilled wine on white cloth, unavoidable and staining everything. Even the captain radioed in from the cockpit. "Ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder that we are honored to welcome all passengers aboard today, including members of our government and public service. We thank you for flying with us." Subtle, but intentional. Naomi leaned back, her daughter now asleep again. She finally let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. From the side galley, the lead flight attendant reappeared. This time, with a silver tray. "Senator Blake," she said, trying too hard to be pleasant. "Complimentary beverage of your choice, and a warm towel. Would you care for champagne?" Naomi looked at her. "I'd care for professionalism. For everyone. Not just me." The attendant nodded, the smile fading slightly, replaced by something more human, shame. Naomi declined the drink and took the towel. Not to use, just to send a message. The rest of the cabin remained quiet for the next hour. The whispers stopped. The call stopped. And for the first time since she boarded, Naomi felt space open around her, not physical space, but respect. It had been forced, sure. But it was there. And as the plane soared above the clouds, she whispered to her daughter, "We're not here to fit in. We're here to change how they see the sky." Cruising altitude had been reached. The fasten seatbelt sign had clicked off, and the cabin lights glowed soft and warm. Outside, clouds drifted like islands in the sky, peaceful and untouchable. Inside the first-class cabin, that earlier tension had settled into something quieter, but no less present. It wasn't peace. It was discomfort draped in silence. The kind of silence that grows when people realize they were wrong but are too proud to say so. Naomi didn't need their apologies. She wasn't waiting for redemption from strangers. But she noticed a shift. She always noticed. The way the man across the aisle now kept his eyes on his tablet instead of hers. The woman with the Chanel purse who turned her body slightly toward the window, retreating into a posture of faux ignorance. The flight attendants were polite now. Overly so. They offered things she hadn't asked for, blankets, refills, updates on weather. But Naomi didn't need any of it. What she wanted couldn't be served on a tray. Her daughter stirred slightly in her sleep, and Naomi adjusted her position, resting her hand gently on the child's back. A familiar ache had settled into her shoulders. Not from the baby, but from the restraint it took to endure ignorance with grace. Halfway through the flight, a man from business class came forward. White, mid-50s, in a suit without a tie. He leaned across the aisle near her seat, his tone low. "Excuse me, Senator Blake," he said, his voice measured. "I just wanted to say, you handled that with a lot of dignity. Some of us noticed." Naomi gave a nod. Just a nod. Not cold, not welcoming. Just acknowledgement. The man hesitated, then added, "It's a shame you had to." That part landed. As he walked back to his seat, she glanced down at her daughter and whispered, "You won't always have to explain who you are. That's the world I'm building for you." Another hour passed. Drinks were poured. Laptops came out. Conversations returned, but softer now. Polished. Everyone playing a part in pretending the earlier confrontation hadn't happened. The flight attendants moved more cautiously near row 2. Not because Naomi had threatened anyone, but because guilt has weight, and they were carrying it. But Naomi knew the story wouldn't stay on this plane. Not after what happened next. Around 2.5 hours into the flight, a young black man in economy stood up and made his way toward the front cabin. He wore headphones and carried a backpack, walking slowly with the unbothered ease of someone stretching their legs. One of the same flight attendants who had once questioned Naomi now rushed up from behind, blocking his path just before the curtain dividing the cabins. "Sir, first class is for ticketed passengers only," she said, her tone sharp, controlled. He looked confused, pulling down one earbud. "I was just stretching." "Then please stretch in your designated area," she snapped. Passengers in the first few rows turned to watch. Naomi saw it clearly. The way the attendant's posture stiffened. The way her hand subtly hovered near her pocket, where the emergency call button was clipped. She was preparing to escalate, again. The young man started to step back, apologizing. But Naomi's voice cut through the cabin like a calm blade. "He's allowed to stand." Everyone turned. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even move. She simply spoke the truth with the weight of someone who didn't need permission. "FAA regulations allow any passenger to walk the aisle during cruising altitude," she continued. "Unless there's a safety issue, he's within his rights." The attendant froze. He wasn't entering the cabin. He was stretching his legs, Naomi added. Like the 3 other passengers who just did the same 5 minutes ago. The attendant glanced around, suddenly aware of the eyes watching. Of course, Senator," she murmured, stepping back. The young man gave Naomi a grateful nod. She smiled faintly. "You're fine," she said. He returned to economy. Naomi leaned her head back and closed her eyes. She'd come here to rest, not to referee prejudice. But the thing about dignity is, once you carry it long enough, you learn to offer it even when it's denied to you. Moments later, the lead flight attendant returned. The same one who'd summoned security on the ground. "Senator Blake," she said softly, crouching slightly to meet her eye level. We just wanted to extend our apologies again. If there's anything we can do to make your flight more comfortable." Naomi looked at her. The same expression. Calm. Steady. "Where was this energy when you thought I was just a black woman with a baby?" she asked. The attendant didn't answer. Naomi continued. "You all had a chance to show character before the badge. Before the name. Before the title. But you didn't." The attendant swallowed. "You're right. I'm not here for apologies," Naomi said. "I'm here for accountability." A pause. Then she added, "There's a reason I fly commercial. It's to see how people are treated when no one knows who they are. Because that's the truth of your service. Not how you behave when the cameras are on, but when they aren't." The attendant's shoulders sagged. "I understand." Naomi nodded. "Good. Then take that understanding and do something with it." She didn't say more. She didn't need to. As the flight neared descent, the captain made another announcement, this time directly referencing the presence of a respected government official on board and thanking all passengers for their cooperation. The tone had changed. So had the mood. But it wasn't comfort Naomi felt. It was clarity. Her phone buzzed slightly in her bag. She checked it once they landed, just one message from her chief of staff. "Just saw the footage. Someone uploaded it from the gate. You handled that like a masterclass. It's already climbing." Naomi didn't reply. She didn't care about going viral. She cared about her daughter growing up in a world where people didn't measure worth by skin, assumptions, or how quietly you entered a room. As the plane taxied toward the gate, Naomi looked around the cabin one last time. The same seats. The same people. But everything had shifted. And none of them would ever forget the day they tried to remove a woman from first class, only to learn she was the one who helps write the laws that govern their skies. The wheels touched down on the runway with a soft jolt, the kind that brings people back to themselves after hours suspended in air. The usual chorus of phone chimes followed. Heads tilted down. Notifications lit up. Texts. Emails. Missed calls. Naomi's phone buzzed, but she didn't reach for it. Not yet. She stared ahead as the plane slowed, the skyline of Los Angeles shimmering beyond the terminal. The baby in her arms stirred but didn't cry. Naomi gently pressed her cheek against the child's forehead. She hadn't spoken since the moment with the attendant. Hadn't needed to. Her silence said enough. The first-class cabin was unusually quiet for arrival. No chatter about vacation plans, no small talk over deals made or missed. Just that same awkward stillness, like a church after a sermon that hit too hard. And Naomi? She sat at the center of it, steady, unrushed, unmoved. Ladies and gentlemen, the captain's voice broke through the cabin. Welcome to Los Angeles. On behalf of our crew, thank you for flying with us. We especially thank all public servants and elected officials who travel with us today. We are honored by your presence. It was subtle, but everyone heard it. The seatbelt signs turned off. People rose quickly, too quickly. Bags came down. Eyes avoided hers. The passengers who had once stared openly at her were now looking everywhere else. At the floor. At their phones. At the overhead bins. Anywhere but at the black woman with the sleeping baby, the same one they had tried to exile to economy not long ago. Naomi remained seated. Let them shuffle. Let them wait. One of the flight attendants returned, this time with a different look. Less scripted. More sincere. She crouched again, but her words came slower now, more careful. Senator, we've been informed that there are a few reporters outside the gate. There was a video posted online earlier. Someone at the terminal recorded the exchange before boarding. It's already getting attention. Naomi blinked once. Of course it is. We have a private exit ready if you'd prefer to avoid the crowd. She considered that. For a moment. But then she looked down at her daughter. Then up at the woman. No. I'm walking out the front. The attendant hesitated. Understood. As the line of passengers filed out, Naomi waited. She wasn't in a hurry. Not anymore. When the aisle cleared, she rose, gathered her things with one hand, and her daughter with the other. As she stepped out of the plane, the sun from the terminal window hit her face, casting a soft glow across her cheek. She paused just past the jet bridge entrance. The noise came next, clicks, murmurs, the scuffle of feet. There were 3 reporters and at least 2 passengers still filming on their phones. Naomi walked calmly past them all. Senator Blake, do you have a comment on what happened? Senator, how often does this happen to you? What do you say to the airline? She didn't stop walking. But she did speak. Once. I say this happens too often to people who don't have cameras or titles. And that's exactly why it has to change. She kept moving. Each step forward felt heavier than the last, not because she was tired, but because she was carrying the weight of history, of expectation, of injustice unspoken. Outside, a black SUV was waiting for her. Her driver opened the door and nodded. She slid in without a word. As the vehicle pulled away from the terminal, Naomi finally checked her phone. Hundreds of missed notifications. The video had reached 1 million views in just 6 hours. Major news outlets had picked it up. Headlines ranged from Senator confronts airline discrimination to first-class bias, what happened on Flight 2275. The comments were just as loud. She shouldn't have had to say anything. She earned that seat. Imagine treating a U.S. senator like that. What about everyday people? This is why representation matters. But Naomi wasn't reading for validation. She was reading for the truth of it all, the raw voices in the comment threads. The flight attendants who messaged her privately, apologizing. The young black mothers who shared their own horror stories. The veterans. The disabled. The overlooked. This wasn't just her story anymore. It never had been. That evening, she gave no interviews, made no public posts. Instead, she sat in her hotel room, her baby asleep beside her, and drafted a letter. It was addressed not to the airline, but to the Federal Aviation Administration. A policy proposal. One that would require annual bias training for commercial airline staff. One that would establish a third-party reporting platform for discrimination in air travel. One that would ensure passengers wouldn't have to go viral to be treated like human beings. She titled it, "The Sky Isn't Neutral." And she meant every word. The next morning, the news broke, Senator Naomi Blake was introducing legislation aimed at systemic reform in the airline industry. The video of her incident wasn't just trending anymore, it was a turning point. Airline CEOs were being asked for statements. One company preemptively launched a review of their training program. But Naomi didn't care about corporate apologies. She wanted institutional change. Real accountability. And that meant making it law. A week later, she returned to Washington and delivered a speech on the Senate floor. It wasn't long. But it was unforgettable. She spoke plainly. About how respect shouldn't be conditional. About how assumptions become policies when left unchecked. About how every flight taken with silence only gives prejudice more room to fly. And then she ended with this. I wasn't mistaken for someone I'm not. I was treated the way this country treats people it doesn't expect to be powerful. And if you felt uncomfortable watching it, imagine living it. The room was silent. And then it rose. Not just to clap, but to reckon. If this story moved you, if it made you feel seen, challenged, or inspired, please don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Have you ever witnessed someone being mistreated in public based on assumptions? What would you have done? Don't forget to like this video and hit subscribe to join a community that believes stories like these matter. Stories of quiet power. Of silent resistance. Of dignity that refuses to be denied. Because here at Disrespected Stories, we don't just tell stories. We reveal the truth in them. See you in the next one.